Evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, October 19th, 2010. Again, it's 7 p.m. This is Day 9 Daily number 201. We just finished Day 9 Daily number 200. Yeah, bravo, this guy. 200 episodes. Yeah, all right. And you know what's cool? October 22nd, the weekend of BlizzCon Friday, is the 1-year anniversary of the start of the Day 9 Daily. So that's kind of cool, little historic facts. Those will eventually be taught in public schools. Probably within the next 5 years, I'd imagine. It's pretty important time. Now, I have to do just a handful of things right at the start. I have to make sure that my Starcraft doesn't overheat because I'm doing a clever thing. I'm loading them outside of Starcraft 2, outside of Battle.net. Yes, that way no one sees the replay title. But then I'm going to obviously have to log in, so I'll have to do all sorts of obnoxious juggling. But I'm being naughty. I'm not doing an intro because I'm treating you archive viewers as though you didn't just tune in for episode 200. Allow me to explain. I canceled Fun Day Monday. Didn't do it live on Monday. Did it at 5:30 instead on Tuesday because I thought I'd do a better job, and it went swimmingly. So for today's Newbie Tuesday, it's on time, and I hope that it as well goes swimmingly. The topic of today's discussion is drops. Lots of drops. How to do them, how to be good at them, because as everyone knows, if you watched QXC at the Intel Extreme Masters at Comic-Con, QXC was amazing with medevacs, just glorious. Since they've slowed medevacs down a little bit, but still, this was during the time when there was no medevac nerf. They were still fast and turned quickly, and he did 20 or 30 drops to QXC on Scrap Station, just relentless dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And last week's Newbie Tuesday was how do you deal with Banshees, all about that. And this one I didn't want it to be how do you deal with drops, but instead I want it to be how do you do drops. Because when people watch QXC play, they don't think, oh, no, how would I stop that? They think, oh, I want to be QXC, oh, and they have their little nerdgasms, as they should, because it was nerdgasm worthy. After that unusually long drink of water, also want to say that, again, for next week's Fun Day Monday, please submit a replay to Monday at day9.tv of the same thing we did 2 weeks ago, which was one unit that you choose in a 3v3 or 4v4 and make the announcement about that at the start of the game, and then send me the replay of the 3v3 or 4v4 to Monday at day9.tv. I'll make an announcement about that at the end, but there's a moral lesson I wanted to begin with as I set up, because it's very important. So the same story I told at 200, I'll tell a little bit of in this one, that I was going to do the Monday show, but my plane landed from Washington, D.C. the same day that the daily was, and I wanted to watch all the replays, I wanted to prepare and have a nice, good, fun experience for everyone, but I was getting really close to going live, and I didn't have them, and I was starting to have tech problems, and I was tired, and I knew it wasn't going to be funny, and I just canceled it. And, sometimes people are going to get upset over that sort of thing. But here is the most important moral lesson that you will ever learn. I want this to ring in everyone's ears because this is such a StarCraft truism and a life truism. It is the following that I have learned from my mother. It is this. Just keep stepping over dead bodies. Now, I should probably qualify that because I don't want to imply you just need to kill a lot of people, right? What I mean is that yeah, I canceled that daily. That is not the way I would have wanted it to go, but the daily didn't get to episode 200 by valiantly marching forward. It got there by me staggering around like a bumbling idiot and trying to just keep showing up despite everything going wrong. Did you realize that it took me to episode 170-something to actually get HD recording? And everyone's like, do it in HD! Everyone does it in HD except you! And I was just like, oh, whatever, I could have been like, hey, back off, it's hard because I'm trying to do my webcam and my mixing. And apparently I'm Kermit the Frog in this story. But but you just don't do that. You just keep stepping over dead bodies. So for instance, if you play in a tournament and you just bomb, and it's casted, first round. You just signed up for MLG DC, and you're versus Huck because you were the dead last seed, right? You just, even though you lose, you just go, oh, that sucks, whatever. And you just keep marching forward, baby. Just keep marching forward. Keep stepping over those dead bodies, man. Just don't worry about it, because you know what? Monday, there's a lot of rage for it. Tuesday, today, doing a doubleheader, ain't nothing to a boss, right? Works out great in the end as long as you just keep going forward. You just want to stagger forward, staggering. Not marching, not running, not walking, just staggering, being comfortable with the idea of being in a stagger. So speaking of staggering, We now look at the example of learning in StarCraft 2. The idea that things just go wrong and you just gotta be cool with that. And that's actually fine. It's actually nothing wrong with just playing a game, having it all go to hell, and you just be like, oh, jeez, oh, God, oh, that was so terrible. You just sort of keep marching forward. Don't really mind what your win rate is. None of that stuff. Your rating will help you have a measure of progress. Notice that word progress. I didn't say your rating is a measure of skill. It's a measure of progress. It helps you know just a general trend of whether you are performing better or worse in a very vague sense. Don't ever read too much into rating systems. But here, Radyan. Radyan is our Jurg player. And the top is Leet, who is the enemy. So again, the point of this daily was drops. How do we do drops? How do we incorporate them into our play? How do we not botch them? And there's a couple of things to note about them, as I'm just going to briefly move away and just continue to let this game play out. Now, there's the big things that I can think of. The first one is you have to be able to do it properly, right? You have to be able to land the units and use them in a way that it helps you out in some fashion, right? Like literally the 1 minute period is what I'm talking about. Between when the drop begins and the drop ends, you need to be making decisions right in there. But the big thing that people really do not think about is, does the drop integrate well with my strategy? For instance, if I go for a fast drop with Terran, I have a barracks, a factory, and a starport. I had to get all those three to even make that happen. Now that the drop is done, am I making use of them? Before the drop happened, was I making use of them? If the answer is, ooh, I don't know, then there's probably something wrong, because you don't want to focus too much on that one individual minute. So I just want to briefly say those two things right now. The individual, like, is the drop are you doing good decisions with the drops? And does it integrate well with the strategy and the rest of that? And of course there's decision making, like, should I have even dropped in the first place? So we're going to be examining all those in this very first game from Radyan. So he gets his Zergling speed upgrade very quickly. Gas pool pulls his guys out of gas. That is the canonical standard opening for Zerg against pretty much anyone. Nothing wrong with doing that. Lead is going for some sort of supply barracks, or excuse me, some barracks factory opening. Radyan's expanding. Now, in production, Radyan makes, I would say, a few extra Zerglings than he necessarily needs to. You can get away with just 2. That's actually what really helps Idra out in a lot of his games, is he just goes 2 lane to kill off probes, because he has speed, and then he just only makes drones. And the advantage of speed is it does shut down scouts really, really easily. The disadvantage is that he's a little bit vulnerable, but again, by getting speed so quickly, he can always back up and make stuff. Again, I haven't said anything about drops yet. We're talking about the good old standard nice stuff. At this point, oh yeah, getting a Roach Warren, that is perfect because we see a bunch of fancy stuff being built at the front, and this is obviously good running in. I'm going to ignore these sorts of run-bys for the time being. Obviously getting a Roach Warren is good. Obviously getting a second Queen when we're expanding is good. This is all good stuff. And I have not sped through the start of the game. That is because I want to reemphasize to all you little droppers out there not to just abandon regular thinking. People seem to think, oh, I'm going to open for like a double Hellion fast expand into Viking. Like, yeah, that's a strategy. That's what I'm talking about. Then someone says, well, I'm going to Thor drop. And then they just sort of do the worst part. They eventually get a Thor and a medevac, and then they drop it and it kills something off, and they go, yeah! And they lose the game immediately. That's terrible, right? And then they get the Thor, they drop it, they're like, I'm so cool, I killed off the Expo hatch. Then 8 mutas fly into their base and kill all their SCVs, and they're like, not as expected, right? We really need to make sure our basic strategies is good. So, for instance, as a Zerg player, you should probably make sure you can even get to the point where you can begin to get your drops. So let's go ahead and see Radyan's getting his hatchery, right? So now that I've done that whole discussion, we see that there are Cloaked Banshees coming, Cloaked Banshees. This was a pretty damn fast Cloaked Banshees. I would just like to state out loud, Radyan is going to be able to defend against them in time. Just plenty and plenty of time. Look, his layer's already halfway done. Cloak is just now halfway done, so we can easily get some sort of Overseer up. So he's going to be just fine. He's getting another Queen here. He's spreading his creep. Unit-wise, he doesn't have really anything except Queens. I like that, personally. I think that's ideal. He should have a spotter at the front at the very least, because you should always be having something at the front. But notice that the Overseer pops in time, and oh yeah, look, even canceled Cloak. Would have had it in time anyways. So we see our little Queenies right now. They're making things away. We have a Hydralisk Den en route. Hydralisks are very, very slow units. Now, I just want you to think about this really fast. Hydralisks are really, really slow. They don't really operate well off creep. In fact, as Artosis always likes to say, if you attack with Hydralisks and you're wrong, say goodbye to your Hydralisks, right? Like, if it turned out that, oh, maybe that wasn't a good time to attack with my Zerglings, you just run the Zerglings away. If you attack with your Hydralisks, the Hydralisks all die, like, immediately. It's terrible, it's horrifying. But with a drop, you can get out in time. Oh, I want you to just think about that. Hydralisks are a very, very nice unit. Hydras and Roaches. Great unit to be able to just integrate with a drop. Same thing with Hellions. Hellions are very good if they can get into the worker lines and all that good jazz. We're going to talk a little bit more about the actual decision-making of the drop in a moment. But we can see already Leet is just trying to stay alive. This, to me, was the first hint that, hey, maybe I might be intending on some sort of drop. Maybe not. That's absolutely fine. We've got to make sure our basic strategy involves some ability to defend against variety, like these Banshees. There's killing off the Banshee. Here's the other Banshee swinging in from the side. Evo Chamber just finishing. It looks like we're going to be able to set up some sort of defense against this. Yeah, it's looking good. We get some Hydralisks up so we can deal with the Banshees. So now we've approached a little ways into the game. We've seen some events unfold. And I just want to talk, now that we've seen this game right now, what makes drop such a hard thing to incorporate into your play is it's difficult to note, was it the drop that lost me the game? Was it the drop actually helped me and I lost in some other way? Was I trying to just shove a drop into a really good strategy? It is one of the hardest things to just be able to analyze properly. So again, that's why I started at the very basic. Do we have some sort of good basic shape to what we're doing? The Zerglings with speed at the start. Roaches, a relatively fast layer. 2 Queens in an expansion. That's a good shape to the way our little Zerg buddies want to operate. That is what I really, really wanted to emphasize. Because if that's bad, then screw everything else. It doesn't matter how much damage your drop did, because that can potentially be confusing. You can do an awful strategy, but then your Dark Templar drop gets in the back of his base, you kill all his SCVs, you win the game, you've been promoted to Diamond. Flex! Cover pits. Right? Yeah, I'm so good. But in the long run, that's not going to help you. So this fundamental stuff that Radyan's doing is great. Now, we could get real nitpicky and try to figure out times he could have made extra drones. Super, super in-depth. But I just want to say that the general shape is good. We don't really want to focus too much on that. Now, strategically speaking, what does a drop do? What does a drop do? It lets us get places that we cannot normally walk to, right? That's all it really does. For instance, bunkers, siege tanks at the front, it's going to prevent us from walking here. It's going to prevent us from walking here. Did you notice how I said that? It helps us walk to a place, or get to a place that we couldn't normally walk to. Helps us get to a place we couldn't normally walk to. There's the speed and the ventral sacs being upgraded. Do you realize how profound of a thing I just said that is? It lets you get to a place you couldn't normally walk to. Because people tend to think that drops are just it makes your units super powerful. Like, if I just get 8 Marines in his base, yeah, I did it. So what? Does it help you? Why? So here's a great example from a game I watched in the replay packs that people submitted. Guy tries to walk 12 Marines up to the front in a normal attack. His opponent has a ton of speed Zerglings and surrounds it and dies. Same player loads 8 Marines into a medevac not long after and then brings it to the back of Zerg's base. Zerglings with speed surround it and die in the exact same fashion. You saw your opponent with a mobile fast ninja army at the front. Dropping is not going to be helpful. But if you see your opponent go Banshee, you know he's not going to have a big Marine force. He's going to be low on stuff. So this will help you walk past whatever fancy defense he has at the front and get to the back where he's not going to have that fancy defense. If you saw your opponent open like 4 racks Marine, or 4 racks Marine Marauder, and then expand, dropping is a terrible idea. Sure, you can get back here, but he's going to have a mobile fluid army, and he's going to do a ton of damage too. So I think this is a very smart play by Rodyan. He just now finishes defending against some sort of terrifying Banshee harassment. He does a good job of that. He gets Hydralisks that will help him defend against the Banshee harassment. He's going to load them up into the Overlords, and he's going to do a lot of damage with that. Do you see how nicely that integrates? Hydras are slow but powerful. If you can move them places, they work very well. Nidus Canals, Creep, Overlords, all help Hydralisks. All help them quite a bit. Now, like things like Hellion drops, like things that kill workers easily, that's also fine. But again, just note the idea that all those units that are good worker killers are just trying to walk to somewhere. Goddamn, they're trying to get to somewhere they don't normally walk to. It took me like a million times to be able to say that, but I did it eventually. So either way, there's a good amount of Thors coming up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Cutesy defense, relying on tech-type units, bunkers, banshees, medevacs for good old defense. Not a lot of Marines. Not any of that sort of jazz. So this attack has a little bit more food. Rodyan isn't tremendously ahead in the game. Not tremendously, but he has good solid underpinnings. Look, he has queens. Should be vomiting larvae, but either way, making a good amount of drones. Now, a drop you should think of as any other attack. One drone being made should have tons of drones being made. That would be awesome. We'd love to have tons of drones. But yeah, cutesy defense. If you see your opponent doing something like relying on... I'm trying to think of a good example in PvZ, because that would be particularly juicy. Yeah, something really juicy. I've seen people do things like get a Colossus really fast and one... Or actually, you know what? How about this? If a Protoss player tries to cannon rush you unsuccessfully, and then early expands really fast, and then gets sentries really fast, he literally is relying on cute stuff, cannons and force fields, to stay alive. So if you drop at the back of his base, he's just not going to have that much stuff there. If for some reason he opens like 4 Warp Gate and makes a lot of units and then expands, dropping's probably not a good idea, because he's just going to wander back there and kill it. Doesn't make your units super units. It just helps them arrive in a location they couldn't walk to. So if there is stuff blocking the front, that's not going to be so good. So I want you to just accept the fact that these SCVs being here, yeah, moving it back. The fact that these SCVs are here is incidental. Yeah, that's something that you want to target, but I just want you to know, well, hey, a drop can work over here, right? It can work, all these SCVs or someplace, or all these Sply Depots or something you can get to. And see how well this is working. This is just working out swimmingly. And at this point, Rodyan should retreat. 100%. You see units? Oh, you don't want to battle units. Why would you do that? And just easily, comfortably retreat. And this is something you will see very commonly. Just super, super commonly, this sort of stuff, where the retreat happens, but a little bit late. And I just want you to see what, like, right before that attack. This is about 100 food versus 76 food. So we're killing stuff off. We maybe pick off 1 Banshee. We have a 30 food lead as Rodyan. 30 food lead. So now we want to pull back. Now, you heard me say the difference between having a strategy that involved the drops and then just the 1-minute execution of how did the drop itself go. Now that our 30 food lead diminished to a 20 food lead because we lost a few Hydralisks. We did a little bit of damage. Thank God he didn't lose that, because that would be something a little bit hard to really put a lot of analysis into. But right there, that slightly delayed pullback, a lot of people think that they are clearly in a way lead because they managed to pull a drop off. But I want to just introduce the concept of, well, wow. One of the best parts about a drop is that we can retreat. If those units die, it's not going to be good at all. And this is especially true for Terran players and Protoss players. Those are the two people who really screw it up the most. Zerg players drop a whole army of Hydras and Roaches, and they sort of view it as their army units, right? Their main core stuff. So the Zerg players are a little bit more comfortable with going, oh, time to leave, and then they leave. Terran players are terrible about this. They will drop 4 Hellions in the base, and they will start to kill some SCVs, do a good damage. The SCVs will start to run. They'll do more damage, and then they'll see tons of units, and they'll suicide 4 Hellions to try to kill off those SCVs. Just load the Hellions back up into the dropship and go away. You literally got free damage. You don't want to sack everything. I know there's Terran players here who are listening in going, oh gee, I always just let all my Hellions die when I do a drop. Why do you do that? Because if you load them back up and pull away, you've lost nothing, and you can do a drop later. Yeah, and Hellions are going to be good in your army almost no matter what. Like in every matchup, they're going to be useful. So you want to be able to pull those back, right? So notice what I did. I was talking about strategy, the overarching strategy. Does this integrate well with the drop? Oh yeah, the Zergling Speed Roach into layer opening, and then into Hydras. That worked out great. That worked out wonderfully. The one problem now with the strategy is that there was no expansion that went up during that drop. There was not a lot of droning that went on during that drop. We want to see this saturated. We just don't want to see this just coated, just gooped up with drones. Oh, that would be so wonderful. That would really make our lives just glorious. But instead, not really the case. All that was just strategy that almost completely ignored the drop. The drop itself just could have been a little bit improved by that. So already we saw Radyan do a good little lead into the drop. And this is sort of helping him. Obviously on Scrap Station, a drop helps bridge this distance quite a bit. We'll end up talking about that a little bit later in another replay. But this one, yeah, hey look, let's go to the resource station. Has about a 20 food lead, about as much as he did when that first drop happened. Oh yeah, there's all those SCVs dying. Oh, that's so great. And, oh, running up here. This is actually not necessarily a bad idea to try to engage some of his forces that are trying to kill off your forces. Just maybe pick off a few tanks. You can back up. But then look what happens. Everything. Oh my gosh. In this particular circumstance, didn't turn out so well. And look at that. Everything died. And again, came in with a 20 food lead. Lost almost everything. Actually did lose everything with the exception of the Overlords. And Leet is going to be able to kind of pull back and close this gap a little bit earlier. Now, Leet in the unit counting station doesn't really have that many SCVs. You can see that there's 21 SCVs. That physically doesn't look like there's that much going on. But Radyan suddenly doesn't really have an army. Look at this. Just at 24 Roaches and 8 Hydras. And this is what regularly happens to people. That they will start doing the drop. And I mean, you hear me say this a lot, but now we actually get to see an example of this. If you do harassment, harassing is an investment. So you have to do more damage than you invested for it to be a good idea. If you get a medevac and like 4 Hellions and everything dies, that's 500 minerals and 100 gas. For nothing. That's basically another way of saying, well, it's going to expand, but I just threw 500 minerals out the window. That's a whole expansion. Things actually don't cost that much in Starcraft too, right? A hatchery's $300, right? How much is that? 4 roaches? Wow, would you rather make 4 roaches or expand, get a whole nother friggin' expansion started? Well, people say, well, it's not fair, you gotta start your drones, you know. Well, okay, well, how about this? Getting an upgrade is even cheaper. Getting a +1 attack upgrade, 75 minerals, and 100 minerals and 100 gas to start the upgrade. That's like basically like a roach and a half, right? Like that's or 2.5 roaches. It's nothing. Things are cheap in this game, right? You don't want to throw your units away. I mean, that's depressing. You don't want to do that. And what players will do is when they start going drop heavy, they'll just start losing. And they'll kind of go, oh, I guess I don't want to drop. Dropping is okay to do. It works out great, as you can see by QXC. And Radyan did 2 drops, which started out marvelously. Did 2 great drops, but here comes the big push with just not that many units. Now, this isn't the time when Roaches had 3 range instead of 4. But still, it's not really the most gigantically horrific difference in outcomes. Just the fact that there's 6 Thors. And notice how rapidly we're seeing Blue's food plummet. And that's game. That's game, right? So suddenly, I want you to note, in Radyan's shoes, this feels horrific, right? You did 2 drops, you killed off a ton of SCVs here, he still almost has nothing mining here. You feel great, and then you just lose. And this is what makes people get so confused. And this is why drops are hard. I can tell you right now, our good friend Radyan really All right, is it going to let me log out? All right, cool. We're going to look at Jim Raynor for a moment, and then once it finishes loading, I'm going to slide this off and log back in. Our good friend Rodyan really did, I think, just a solid opening that integrates well with drops. Got the Hydralisk and dropped with them. A lot of people won't get Hydralisks because of the fact that it is so difficult to be able to do stuff with them. So smartly, Rodyan just went ahead and... sorry, I gotta make sure my computer doesn't explode. He just went ahead and dropped with them. That's fine. That works gloriously. That is genius. Nothing wrong with that. But because it literally the way that the drops went is what caused him the catastrophe. The way the drops went are what caused him the problem. And what's going to happen is that our poor friend Rodyan is going to look at that game and go, I hate doing drops. I'm not doing them anymore. And then he's actually not going to do them anymore. And his win percentage is going to go up because he's not shirking off all these extra units. And then as a result, he will tell himself as time passes, well, I guess drops are just not a good idea overall. When really, I think that is a marvelous example of that. Now, we're going to see something a little bit different happen here. As we return back to another game. Yeah, here's another one. This is not actually the game that I thought I was going to be loading up, but this is fine. I loaded them up out of order as I adjust the screen. Perfect. Of course, I wanted to be clever enough not to reveal my email address and password, which I successfully did once upon a time. So, almost Dreadnought, is up at the north. He is our Terran buddy. At the bottom, we have Chaos, who is our Protoss enemy. Now, we're going to look at... we're going to start asking ourselves a couple of questions that we didn't ask ourselves on Scrap Station, that game we just saw. On Scrap Station, here's a very important question that you want to ask yourself. Does dropping let you do something that you couldn't do beforehand? Take an example of Xel'Naga Caverns. His expansion is wide open. Hellion Harass is going to work great on Xel'Naga Caverns, like super great. Do you really need to get dropships to harass as natural? No! The answer is no, you really don't need to do that. Do drops actually really help a lot on Scrap Station? Yeah! Oh my god, do they cut the distances. And obviously, it's kind of a clear visual separation. We're going to start to see now a little bit about strategy here. Is dropping necessarily the best idea? In the last game, strategy lined up properly. Our opponent went Banshees. It was something a little bit more passive, right? Something that relied more on cutesy defense instead of just lots of mass, huge units. So either way, we're going to see Dreadnought go ahead and make our factory really fast. So just to touch on that a little bit, the big, slow, unwieldy, cutesy units are things like Colossus, Sentry. Like, for instance, one Colossus, I just want you to think of one Colossus. One pure Colossus. Loses really easily when it's by itself. Insanely easily. Small number of roaches, Colossus dead, right? If you have, like, one Zealot, a Zealot can kind of, like, hold up in a small number. It's pretty good. So anytime someone's making one of those big units that kind of need support, even something like Sentries, Templar, Colossus, Siege tanks that are sieged, Spine Crawlers, big defenses for Zerg, these sorts of things. These are very sort of like static things that only operate well when they're in big numbers. That's when dropping's good. It abuses those. Part of the reason why I think QXC was able to abuse Huck so well is because Huck got his Colossus just a little bit too fast. So now this Colossus becomes more of a liability because it has to try to travel around defending these drops. And QXC can just attack in two places at once. There's not really that much that the opponent can do about it. So we're looking at Dreadnought, right? I'm going to call him Dreadnought even though he's Dreadnought. Or whatever. So there's the Baraxan going down. There's a Starport. Okay, he's going for a fast Banshee. Against a Protoss player. Ain't nothing wrong with that. In fact, quite a good opening. Very, very strong, in fact, I would argue. Banshee's going to be coming up eventually. I would prefer to see that Banshee come out earlier, but he's, went ahead and slammed down an Expo, trying to do a block with a factory. All good stuff. Again, we could get real critical and put on our super goggles and go, ooh, the command center could have, only been built earlier if the Banshee was started. But I want to let you know that even if you are like a bronze or silver level player, players who don't have a lot of grasp of the mechanics, who might struggle with that sort of stuff, you can drop all you want. You just need to think, is this a good idea? Will it actually help me do damage? I generally would recommend that you not do it. There's nothing wrong with just relying on macro, micro, in big armies, and expand timing. But we're going to see Dreadnought sort of move around here to the backside. So here's Dreadnought moving in, and he's going to be hitting the bottom. Yeah, doing damage to Chaos. All right. Now, Chaos is doing something that I think is quite brilliant, which is this little sneak around stuff. This Banshee's going to get some good kills there. Yeah, getting an 8 kill. Is it going to get a 9 kill? No, it's going to go ahead and sneak off. Perfect. Alright, Chaos is going to be warping in the front. We see Zealots trying to move in here for a distraction. I think the Zealots would have been better if everything just crunched the front. Actually, Protoss just could have won the game, like, right now. So here is a big force of units. Dreadnought is trying to expand. More warping trying to happen, but right now it looks a little bit under the gun. But either way, our opponent did a big army, one basing style, right? Zealots, Sentries, Immortal, Stalker, lot of Stalkers, lot of Gateways, just a lot of stuff that is not like a Colossus, that's not a Templar, that's not like Sentries and Cannons. It's a very fluid defense. So this sort of drop feels a little bit scarier to me. As in, like, this feels riskier. I don't like that Dreadnought is doing this drop. Coincidentally, this whole friggin' army's here, but even so, watch what ends up happening. Dreadnought can try to poke in here. There's a few units back here. You know, there's stuff going on at the front. Part of the reason we don't want to do a drop, you know, we just don't really have that many units. You know, here comes the drop. A little bit of counter-aggression. Here's the stim. And here comes... Uh-oh. Oh, no! Oh, look at how terribly this is going to go. This is a very risky spot to be in. Now, QXC had a lot of drops that went like this at IEM, like a surprising amount that happened at ESL. But you know what? Like, the timing of it worked out nicely. What ended up happening is something like this. See, now this is an advantage that Dreadnought has. This is what dropping sort of allows you to do. You can expand over here, and if you're dropping regularly, there's not that much your opponent can do. QXC, he was dropping Huck regularly on Scrap Station. I want you to watch that game. QXC took the island, took his natural, and took the other, like, semi-island on Scrap Station. Really, 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 really fast, because Huck was completely preoccupied with drops, because Huck was going a mainly Colossus force that had to stay static with the rest of his forces. Since the rest of those forces were Stalkers, all those Stalkers had to stay back and defend drops. There was no way his opponent could have possibly moved out. But I still want to note, this is good, expanding a lot to islands. I would prefer to expand here to the island, but either way, this is effectively equivalent. That's good, but the election to drop at this point in time is not as good. The fact that there was a bunch of stuff that you had to worry about at the front, the fact that there's all these units back here. Yeah, look, here's another drop that sort of went on at the same time. This is just not good. When your opponent is staying low on the base count, it is very ineffective to be doing drops. In particular, I want you to just imagine if your opponent went like 4-gate. He says, almost falling out of his chair. If your opponent went 4-gate and is just chilling in his base, 4-gating it up, why would you drop? Everything's there, right? Like, obviously, everyone just sort of goes, yeah, totally, absolutely. But that logic tends to break down when people get on, like, 2 bases. People tend to go, oh, well, he's on 2 bases, I guess he's going to drop. There's 2 places to drop. There's an opening to drop. Not exactly, right? Great thing to do is if your opponent's on, like, 3 or 4 bases, dropping in the back of his main, dropping at a third at the same time. Classic move, hitting the back of the base with a drop, hitting the front of the base with a push. And we're starting to see that Dreadnought, who is even in food, is kind of, like, pushed himself behind. And we have another medevac here. And notice that Chaos, if we go to the Chaos scan, is not really moving out that much. He's getting more gateways. I recall him getting Templar Tech in this game. Yeah, great. There's the Templar Tech. And we're going to see Dreadnought. Now, Dreadnought is doing basically what he should. He's getting barracks. He's getting the upgrades. Doesn't have combat shield yet. He's starting to get a factory for tanks, which is fantastic on 3 bases. Absolutely love that. He's expanding to the side. I think that's also great. He should probably transfer some workers. And now look at the food differential. Yeah, Dreadnought's caught up. That's fantastic. That's great news, right? But he had a failed drop here, and he had a failed drop here. Not as fantastic as he would like. And he's moving back here to kill this off, so he can eventually expand. Chaos is starting to branch out. Just barely starting to branch out. Now is when would be a little bit better of a time to be setting up for some sort of drop. Dreadnought, I would like you to siege your tank. I would really love you to get that combat shield. Fantastic. So here's yet another drop. This drop timing, I actually think, is probably a little bit better. And also this drop angle, I think, is better. We haven't really talked too much about the drop angle, but one of the best parts about a drop is that you can retreat. I said that last game. People still sort of are like, well, the dropship and all the units, goodbye. Please leave your last rites to your family and friends, because you're fucking dead. I'm not retreating anybody this game. Don't do that. They're your buddies, man. You don't get that many units in a game. Sure, you get a huge army, but the armies are in, like, the 40s of units, not in the thousands of units. This isn't total annihilation, right? So, the fact that he's dropping at this top end, we can easily retreat. I love a drop right down here where you can just pack up, zoom, run away. A little bit riskier, though. He could blink up to the high ground. This, where you have open space to retreat to, beautiful. And see, this sort of thing, this is just classic drop misexecution. This is the sort of thing that convinces people that drops are about luck. People tend to think, well, oh man, Nada was playing great that game, but the only reason he was able to win is because he got lucky with the drop paths. Oh, I didn't got lucky. I want to just point some things out. Let's say for some reason Dreadnought was pushing over here to the right side. Actually, let me ignore that for a moment. Let's say everything happened as it was before. A retreat along here is obviously safe because there's nothing there. It's empty, open space. But now let's say that our good Terran buddy really wants to be able to retreat that dropship up this way. The answer is obviously not, you can't do that, units can be there. Let's say Dreadnought pushed all the way over here and was just moving units over here. Protoss sees that, freaks out, moves units over here. Now all of a sudden your dropship path has opened itself. You can plant a scan here and you can retreat. You want to open those paths up for yourself. Nothing wrong with scanning, nothing wrong with sending an overseer ahead of the pack, and nothing wrong with having an observer checking out a flank, or nothing even wrong with having a worker do it. Workers are cheap, workers are expendable. You can just sort of jam them out into open space very, very easily. Again, this little command center here is a lot safer than it might look. This looks a lot like luck. People, like, if for some reason Chaos lost this game, he'd be like, oh, I just need to scout myself a little bit more. But in reality, it's a lot safer than it seems. Now, what we're going to see is just absolute devastation, right? Everything just gets totally friggin' murdered. Absolutely friggin' murdered. And I really think that Dreadnought would have been in just a much better situation had the first drop here that died worked, the second drop here that died worked, and the third drop that died here had that worked. And because Marines just do an insane amount of damage, they're going to be able to pick off at least a decent amount of stuff. So now we're going to see Dreadnought start falling behind again and again and again. It's just not looking so good at all. He's going to try to rebuild. And now some interesting things are going to begin happening in the later stages of the game, assuming I recall properly. You saw how Chaos just sort of like swung ahead. Again, this is the discouragement that people feel with drops. Again, this sort of discouragement that they feel. You can still sort of pull that off. You still can actually execute this properly. Getting upgrades, all that good jazz. Here comes yet another drop. Let's see how this one goes. Now, this is the sort of drop I actually defend. I like the timing of this. Now, timing has nothing to do with this sort of thing. It has to do with the shape of your opponent's bases. Notice how there's like 4 bases, all wide and spread out. Any drop when your opponent is high on bases and you're kind of screwed is great. And look, there's the drop, there's the target fire. Little things like scooting the medevac over here, so that way you can run into the medevac and retreat, not having the medevac widespread open. That's great. And look, this is kind of what you want to have happen. I mean, obviously as Terran you want to have more units, but suddenly Dreadnought was in a good enough position that he did a drop and his opponent said, well, I just guess I can't defend that. I guess I better go kill that. What happens to Dreadnought if this attack doesn't work? He is rude. That is one of the greatest things that happens with a drop. You drop in the back of his base, and he just goes, oh no, oh my goodness, I can't get to that in time. I better attack and at least get some advantage here, because no one wants to just lose an expo, and then that's the end of the story. So that's the advantage of nice, small, tiny, little teensy drops. Big drops like what we saw last game. Those are also great, but those are, again, amazing excuses to build drones. Just wonderful little excuses to build drones. This is actually, I think, turned out kind of nice for Dreadnought. Even though he ended up, even though he's still really, really low on food. And tragically, there's a misrally here. Alright, great, he ends up re-rallying. He still is so far behind on units, but I want to point out that that drop was just beautifully timed. Everything about that drop was just great. I didn't see if it retreated and stayed alive, though. Assuming it did that, that's good. And Chaos cleverly just builds a ring of pylons around a command center. Oh, okay, I kind of see what's going on here now. And Dreadnought slowly tries to re-expand. Would like a little bit more of a skew towards Marauders, a little bit earlier from Dreadnought. His name's not actually Dreadnought, but it is now. I'm the one in the driving pants at this point in time. I think we can clearly see that Dreadnought is sort of slowly starting to run out of options. So I'm going to go ahead and quit that replay and load up the next one of the Day 9 Daily. There was in the Scrublub folder, if I can identify it. Ah, yes, here we go. Now, one thing that's really important to note is that in a lot of circumstances, you just don't need to drop at all. There's no reason to. People see players like QXC. They want to be like him. And then they try to incorporate more drops into their play, but what people tend to do, which is actually fine, is they try to scoop what QXC does into their play. They try to scoop this gigantic drop aggression into their play, and they try to jam it in there, kind of like just pushing like, you know, like, oh hey, I like Jolly Ranchers. Let me just push those into the dough I'm about to put in the oven. That'll make a great bread sandwich, you know, like let's make some Jolly Rancher loaves of bread. Like, that's kind of, that makes sense. I'm going to take my style and bend it a little bit, but there's a lot of other things that QXC's doing in there, like when he's making SCVs, what kinds of units he's making, and all that good jazz. And there's nothing wrong with realizing, oh, I guess my style doesn't work so well with dropping. Like, for instance, Idra's style does not work so well with dropping in a lot of circumstances. He's expanding tons. He's not really making that many units. What he is trying to do is trying to hold, and then have a big swell forward with just insane numbers and just amazing expansion timing. And doing that does place certain demands on his playstyle, and there's no reason to just say, well, maybe I should expand everywhere and get a lot of upgrades and get a lot of drones and make a lot of units and drop. You're noticing how that last statement just doesn't sound right? You can't both make a lot of drones and expand and upgrade and still have the resources, let alone the larva, to make units to do a drop. It just doesn't make sense. And this is a pretty simple game. I'm just going to go ahead and speed through it very, 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 very easily. Very quickly. I'm going to speed through easily. Dude, I'm so good. I'm going to speed through this game so easy. I'm such a Gosu replay watcher. Now, these players aren't playing at the highest caliber. Intentionally selected this replay for that very reason. Got our Queenies coming out. Good early expanding. General shape. Let's just look at general shapes to build. Getting these basic structures up early. Would have liked to see that upgrade. But we see App Bullet, creeping up the map. We see Tuco. That look, my brain wants to say Tokyo so bad because W and Y are so close to each other in the alphabet. They're almost as close to each other as they are to the number J. So, looks like, yeah, making some Hydralisks, going to the resource counting station. Wow, App Bullet is way ahead. Whoa, look how far ahead he is. He's even starting to set up to get a gold. Yeah, baby. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Tuco is making Colossi, is getting gateways. Zerg is still light years ahead. Now, if you're Zerg, I want you to just look at this shape again. Here's a base. Here's a base. Here's a base. Here's a giant army. We have a bigger army than our opponent. We're getting more upgrades than our opponent, and we have more expansions than our opponent. Why the hell do you need a drop? You don't even need to attack. You know what you should do here? You should just deny expansions, scout to make sure he doesn't overexpand, and make sure that you don't get dropped. Make sure you don't lose to a big timing push. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Right? Now, like, what we're going to see here is we're going to actually see a drop that doesn't work well strategically into this. Now, you heard me say, yeah, Hydros are a good unit for drops. Yeah, Hydros are also a great unit in a big army mix. And in this particular situation, if we're expanding a lot, and look, even clearing some things out with drones here to be able to expand later, great! You are clearly going down the path of expanding. Already, now, if we were way earlier in the game, like maybe at the 7-minute mark, when there was just cannons here at the front and just sentries, that would have been a good time to like throw down some Hydra drops, try to pick some stuff off. It's later then. It's later on in the game. Huge armies in Protoss' base. No reason to drop. We have a ton of expansions. We need to defend those. No reason to drop. We need to have our units around the map to make sure he doesn't expand. No reason to drop. There's just no reason to drop at this point in time. Not a lot of reasons to drop. Are you starting to get the sense of, again, if our overall strategy doesn't coincide well with the drops, we probably shouldn't be doing it. No real reason to do these huge drops. Now, I want to just note the difference between doing a drop and getting drop, because right now we're getting drop. If we do some sort of giant wrecking blow to an army, doing a counter drop could potentially be fantastic. But I just want to note that right now, at this very moment, trying to waltz into our opponent's base is not the best. Look at how way far ahead at Bullet is. And in this patch, Roaches do have range 4. Oh god, we have so much money. I would love to see an expansion coming up. We're getting a Hive. Nifty. Protoss is throwing down a Nexus. Now, we shouldn't have let this Nexus go down in the first place. Dear at Bullet, this should not have gone down in the first place. Check for that next time. But it's going down. Now, okay, now this is so important that you get this, right? It shouldn't... I call this the Razzdazzle. This is what happens when I've been in my room with these giant 650 watt floodlights on for this long, is that like my hair starts getting frizzled in the heat and just the general exhaustion. But you know what? Razzdazzle's for you. Now, coming back to the thing that is so important that you understand. I'm going to say this twice because it's so important. He should not have let the expansion go down in the first place. But now that he has, it's a better time to drop. Now that he has done that. Very simple idea. When there's lots of spread out expansions, it's easier to do poking drops. It's easier to do doom drops where you bring in everything. It's easier to do smaller drops. Spread outedness is a very good time to do drops, right? So the fact that he got dropped is going to coincidentally help him here. But again, at Bullet's strategy did not need drops at any point. This is very early beta play. Hydras and Roaches, just getting those in. Very, very easy, right? And now we're going to see the Doom drop. There's a few things now. Ignoring strategy execution-wise for the drop. Remember how I broke those up? The execution of the drop is different from whether it was a good idea or not. Don't float over this terrain. Take this path. Go down here. Cut this way. And scoot on up. What if I really want to drop from here? Well, walk your whole damn army up here. Put your overlords here. And then cut your army left, down, and then drop. You want to force those paths open. Because there's one overlord going down. There's 2, 3, 4 overlords get killed. Yuck. So here is the Nidus Worm plus drop. I'm undecided as to whether I necessarily like that or not. Now, we can start to see, hey, this was a good idea because with this third Nexus up, all these units were way out here. They were not prepared for this sort of garbage coming in the back of the base. Not prepared in the slightest. This is not going so well. So, at this point in time, this is actually a very interesting idea that just sort of popped in. You heard me say, I don't know how I feel about the Nidus Worm. For a Doom drop like this this is a good chance for you to retreat. You know what the best part about a drop is? The fact that you can retreat. The fact that you can get in there, get out of there, he said with Raz Dazzle. I'm getting a haircut on Thursday. Baby, I'm excited. It is the fact that you can retreat. And a Nidus Worm is a great way for a gigantic army to retreat. Because it's kind of clunky. Go load into you, and let me just shift Q up my overlords to load into. And okay, time to move overlords. By that time, like, every one of them's dead except one that's, like, empty, coincidentally. Why is it always the empty overlords that escapes? It drives me nuts. But hey, a Nidus Worm is a good chance to retreat. Now, I just want to look at the food distribution that happens in this. Because the food is a very nice, loose way to sort of determine advantages. So look, Zerg's a little bit ahead, given food. And with the money, I would argue a lot a bit ahead. And by the way, remember in last game how we talked about Terran sneaking little expansion while he dropped? Sneaking an expansion while you drop, perfect. Anytime you attack, it's a good time to drop. Or let me try it again. Anytime you attack, it's a good time to expand. Whether it be a drop or just a straight push at the front, always a good time to expand. Now, App Bullet is moving in the back here, moving in the back. Notice that before I started losing overlords, a little bit ahead, teensy bit ahead. A lot of bit ahead given the money and the other expansion, but just based on foods, a little bit ahead. A little bit ahead, here comes all these stalkers. Uh-oh, there goes down an overlord, here goes down another overlord, here goes down another overlord, and then there goes down the last overlord. Oh my goodness, 20 food behind. 20 food behind. So times like these, we want to check our production. What is Zerg making? Well, it looks like he's making Nidus Worm and other things. Oh, you know what? We're going to go through this battle twice. Let's just go through the resources first. Nothing wrong with just rewinding and doing something multiple times. So, oh my goodness, wow, a lot of damage seems to be being dealt. Well, hey, App Bullet has kind of inched his way ahead again. That seems awesome. Yeah, it looks like he's killing off buildings too. Wow, great. Can maybe pick off some of these key structures. You can't walk to key structures, but you can certainly drop there. Again, that's what helps a lot. And see, now we're starting to see, just seconds before all these units get up the ramp, see all the units right there? Right before they get up the ramp, we're feeling pretty good as App Bullet. Feeling pretty damn good. Tuco's not feeling too good. And see, when all these units come in, now is time to retreat. It's a good time to retreat. We didn't even need to drop in the first place. Didn't even need to do that. But then when our opponent took a third base, then it was time to. And then, oh geez, we were. Did you see that little dip? Did you see that little dip that happened? And by little dip, I mean big dip. Look at that, 140 versus 140. Uh-oh, 140 versus 120, 140 versus 118, 140 versus 106, 140 versus. Oh man, a lot of stuff died there. Could have retreated. Could have even loaded up into the overlords and maybe done a little bit of a little easier retreat action. With Doom drops, it's a little bit harder to do big retreats, but that's what's great about a Nidus Worm. The best part about drops is that you can retreat. You can always pull back. And now Zerg, because they're expending his money, is easily swinging back into the fray again. And we're going to see, you're starting to see a general theme between these replays that I've selected, which is that people tend to just do a little bit of overcommitting to drops. I don't want you to think it's that drops are fucking up, per se. Because people tend to do stuff like, oh, look at that. Oh, he lost all his Marines. Oh, it's terrible. Great players like QXC lose dropships with stuff in them all the time. But they still end up pushing way ahead. Because there's all those other advantages they abuse. Like expanding, powering, upgrading, making more workers. Very, very common stuff. At the end of the day, we're starting to see a little bit of danger here, right? A little bit of overcommittal. Wow. He dropped and then did a lot of damage, and then Nidus Worm was doing more damage, and amazingly enough, Apple Bullet is coming out ahead, but I just want to state for the record, this drop was actually a net loss. I can tell you that, because notice, before the battle started, Apple Bullet and his opponent were even in food. But App Bullet had a giant amount of money. I call it a trust fund, right? Because it's my favorite joke. Oh, maybe he can pay off his kid's loan with that. He had a ton of money. At the end of the battle, they're even in food, but App Bullet has no money. You starting to see that? That's a loss. I can tell you that is a net loss that happened. That's what makes drops so hard to analyze, because App Bullet, this feels juicy, right? To have hollowed out a base. But it was a net loss because of the fact that a few too many units were tossed out the window there. Dropping is quite expensive. Quite expensive. We're starting to see a huge amount of Ultralisks pop out. And this is another tragic thing that happens after people do drops. You know how good this felt? Don't overreact to the success of your own drops. Do not overreact to the success of your own drops. Because look at what Bullet's doing. He's boxing an army, and he's saying, go. What angle is he attacking it? The worst possible angle. I've seen Bullet do some pretty reasonable things positioning-wise in this game. This is not one of them. And I'm not saying that to be like, Apple Bullet, you really botched this. But I'm saying he's capable of doing it, but in his mind he said, nah, I don't need to do it. It's fine. It's no big deal. It's totally cool. It's not a big deal. And look what happens. There's a giant army here waiting for him. And look at all those Ultras and Roaches doing the damage as best they can. Gets absolutely demolished. Completely demolished. Tuco was in a situation, look at that, plummeting back down again. He does have a lot of money in the bank. He maybe would have been able to hold it off. But there was an overreaction to the drop. A gross overreaction to the drop. Just gigantic. He thought he was way more successful than he was. And now this sort of thing happens. Again, notice how similar this was to the first game. How similar this was to the second game. There's a couple of different things going on. In the first game, the drops just went on a little bit too long. Right? Just barely. And the strategy was looking pretty good with it. The second game was, again, it was a little bit more of poor drop execution in general. The strategy could have been a little better. Needed a few more Marauders in there. Definitely needed to retain those units a little bit better. And actually, let me split this up even more. In the first game, it was the retreating of the drops that was not as good. Right? The timing of it, what units we selected, our strategy was good with those Hydralisks dropping. That was very, very good. In the second game, the timing was a little off. Our opponent was two-basing, turtling hard with lots of gateway units, and he knew it. Shouldn't even be attempting to drop there. No, shouldn't be attempting. Lost 2 full dropships, and then right at the time when it was good to drop, didn't execute it properly. In this game, our strategy didn't even look good with drops. Our strategy. In the middle of this game, I'm going to remove the overlay, or apparently put the other one up. Okay, let me remove the overlayer and move back to, I'm going to go back to this phase in the game. Let's even advance a little bit farther forward. Right here, when Bullet is taking his third, look at the advantage he has. Time to scout for expansions. We're having a this strategy doesn't even need to think about dropping at this point. In fact, should be thinking about stopping drops, because you heard me say when you're spread out on a lot of bases, that's when it's a good time or when he's spread out on a lot of bases, that's when it's a good time for you to drop. So if you are spread out on a lot of bases, you should really be worried about drops. Just didn't even need to do it. And in fact, the drop ended up being a big net loss, because really, honestly, this is a good time to start thinking about dropping, but a huge giant doom drop when our opponent is still in a little bit of a turtling mindset is going to come back to haunt us. Honestly, if this third base were here, for instance, a big doom drop would be a little bit better. But here, look, there's the whole army that's really dedicating nothing to defending. And then, as usual, there's the last. Maybe we should have retreated. So, for the last replay, we're going to be doing a regular view of the Day 9 Daily, KZN, his replay. Thanks, KZN, for watching so much. You're the man. We're watching one of his replays. And this last one has a pretty different flavor from the other ones, which is, I like the timing of the drops. I like how it integrated with the strategy. I like the way it looked. But it was not the drop itself that went wrong. It was the combo. It was the attack at the front. A little bit of attacking at the front. So let's go ahead and speed it up. It's Protoss vs. Protoss. KZN, our hero, is going to be spawning at the north position. At our right position is Mang. We see a gateway going down. We see an assimilator going down. We see another pylon going down. Yeah, fantastic. We see Bang successfully not walling off his front. Whoopsie daisies. He's getting 2 gates. He's getting a fast warp. Gates is getting his second gas quickly. Uh-oh, 2 gates going on for KZN. Pylon at the back. Pylon's being spread out. Perfect, perfect. Oop, pylon by the shrubbery. So important on this map. Pylon by the shrubbery. Really important. Want to be able to warp in on both sides of that. Oh my goodness, 3-gate robo with an observer. Cool, 3-gate robo with an observer. Yeah, and there's the robo facility. Fantastic. You can go into the unit counting station. KZN is actually playing better. More probes, more units. Colossus a little bit behind. Now, Mang strategically is doing a smart thing. You can actually cut gateway units, get faster Colossi, and keep your entire giant-ass army on the ledge. I think that what KZN does here is brilliant, to be entirely honest. I think this is brilliant. Now, I just want to show this as an example of the one thing you got to be really careful about with drops. It's so important. You'll see it when we do it, right? Because I remember I watched this replay really fast. I have a lot of replays I need to sort through, so I just was kind of going, is there any drop coming? I mean, hell, look at the, oops, he says, restarting the replay. Going to the resource counting station, look at this, KZN is ahead. Oh, wow, all right, nice, wow, and there's drops coming up. They're almost doing the same thing. Let me leave these unit counting stations up. My goodness, KZN certainly has a lot more stuff. 11 zealots, oh, wow. 13 zealots, 11 stalkers, 1 colossus. And, oh, he's doing a warp prism at the back. Oh, his warp gates are awaiting and ready. And really not that much stuff. So here is a cute defense. It is on 2 base, but this is still cute face. A lot of colossus, some sentries, but not really that many zealots and stalkers. Not a lot of core units there. Here comes the zealots. Now, this is awesome. Now, at this point in the game, I was looking at this and I was like, alright, cool, KZN won the game. And then I was sort of looking at this, I was like, well, no, I think that was still pretty effective. I'll bring in some more zealots. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, where are all of KZN's units? What the hell happened here? Oh my god, oh no! Oh my goodness. Now, I just want to rewind back to kind of show you, just because I thought that was fun. As we advance forward, this is something that I would say that all players should be aware of. Notice how when KZN moves out here, we see Mang positioning himself. He's getting ready for the push, right? He's getting ready for this giant invasion. Pretend for a moment that this never ever attacks. This is an example of forcing your drop to work. If KZN had just sort of done this haphazardly and all of KZN's units were here, red player, Mang, could have just killed it, right? He could have just gone, oh, cool, dead. The fact that there was all these units here, how does Mang kind of have to respond? Well, awkwardly enough, he kind of has to just bring 1 unit here because the rest of his units kind of have to protect here at the front. Now, but watch what happens. I actually had to go into the KZN cam to see what happens. All right, let's go to the camera. Locked. All right, so he says, attack! Oops, wait, KZN cam. So he brings the Colossus in. Whoops, a little bit of a blunder, but it's not terrible. And then, look, he starts warping in at the back. Really, there's a little bit too much focus here on the drop. Okay, oh, geez, where'd all those units go? Did you see that? In the brief period he was looking away, suddenly he just doesn't have any units anymore. Oh, my goodness, right? Like, a poke at the front, it's really important that if you do that poke at the front, that you don't over-focus on your drops. People tend to, especially when they're incorporating anything new into their game, their brain locks in on that and forgets about all the other things. If you start dropping a lot of games in a row, you'll get used to watching your army and watching the drop at the same time, but if you're new to drops, you're going to watch only the drop. And you're going to forget your macro, you're going to forget your probes, you're going to, worst of all, forget about your main army, and it's going to go suicide itself unnecessarily. So I just want to also reiterate, when you're dropping, you should really say to yourself, okay, and Jesus, what are everything else that I need to do? Oh my gosh, I better not. Better keep making probes, better keep making pylons. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Because look at this. Now I think this is genius. Cute units. If I just keep warping in at the back, what the hell can he do? I'm just going to hold off. I'm just going to keep defending. I'm going to back off. I'm going to get in a good position. Obviously, this isn't a good position, but I could get in a good position. And the instant too many units move to the back here, I can hit the front. Or I can load up and run away. Or I can keep warping in units at the back. There's a number of things that KZN can do. But watch how quickly all this stuff dies. Here go down a few shots. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Oh. Oh baby. Oh baby. And that's not so good. Yep. And there cleans up the rest. The Colossi have, about 12 kills between them. Not a spot you want to be in. Not a spot you want to be in. So this sort of relates back to the idea of just overaggression in general. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat for a few questions. Yeah. So let's see. Taking some questions, but to recap, there are some similar themes between those that you really need to be very careful. That you are retaining units with your drops is probably the most important one. Also, another one is to make sure that in terms of his strategy, is he doing something that would leave him vulnerable to drops, that would leave him vulnerable to the back of his base? Most common one, does his strategy rely on a lot of static structures? We saw Kiwikaki force Idra to make some spine crawlers at his front and then warp prism in the back of his base. Awesome. Great. We see Protosses who go Forge, Cannon, Sentry all the time lose to Nidus Worms. No reason it wouldn't lose to some sort of drops like that. All really, really important. Oh yeah, Extortion says, can you talk about Kiwikaki's drop on Idra in the IEM last weekend? That is a little more sophisticated. I mean, yeah, sure, he made a few spine crawlers, which you heard me just say, but really he was forcing Idra to be low on larva. He delayed the hatch a really long time, so obviously that contributes to a lack of larva. The main hatch couldn't really devote that much to drones at the start, so need to make some units. So again, after everything clears up in Idra's head, Idra says, oh, thank God, now I can go back to making drones. Again, he's low on larvae. He's trying to make as many drones as he can, but he can't really make any units. So Kiwikaki steps in and says, time for a drop, and this is at a time when Idra's only been making drones, exclusively. And really, again, because he was low on larva, and let me say it one more time, because he was low on larva and was trying to make drones with his limited larva, he was therefore low on units at the back of his base. And there you go. All sorts of things that you can force your opponent to do. So KZM puts a push at the front, pulls units away from the back, drop at the back becomes effective. In the first game, player opens up Banshees, has to rely on a tank bunker placement at the front, leaves him vulnerable at the back. A player with a lot of expansions has to have his units spread thinly, is vulnerable to a drop at the back. You'll notice that theme. Soy Presoza says, what about Hellion drops, especially blue Hellion drops? Yeah, sure, those are fine, but be careful that you don't suicide. Hellion drops are the prime example of just this rampant problem with people when they try to drop, of just suiciding the drop. They just say, the purpose of this drop is to lose the whole fucking drop. And if I do incidental damage, yeah! And then they do that 10 games in a row, and they lose all 10 of them, and they go, well, I guess dropping's bad. No, suiciding's bad. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Suiciding units is bad. Keep those units alive. So, continuing along. Oh, KZN asks a follow-up question, which is great. DJ, you talk about avoiding the suicide mentality with drops, but how does this mesh with the ability to warp in units with a warp prism? Whether you drop or not, one warp prism only gives you room to save 4 zealots and sentries, or 2 stalkers. You're playing Starcraft 1 in your head. You can actually fit 4 stalkers in there. Where half the threat of the drop is theoretically infinite in size. So, with the suicide mentality, I mean suicide in the most derogatory fashion, where you wander in, everything dies, and nothing really comes out of it. If you lose 4 Hellions and kill 20 workers, that is a good exchange. Notice that it was an exchange. People will too often say, dude, I killed 20 of his workers. Yeah, but you killed 20 workers and you lost 4 Hellions, so you came out somewhat ahead. Not gigantically, insta-snap, boneringly ahead. No, you came out a little bit ahead. So you have a little bit of an advantage, thanks to the fact that you got the better end of that exchange. So if you do that warp prism stuff, like in your game, KZN, all his probes stopped mining for like already a significant amount of time. That's some damn good damage. You start killing off some structures and then peel them away from the front for a big push, I think it'll end up being okay. But it's so important you do the before drop and after drop analysis. You saw what I did in that third game with app battle. App is the part I remember. With the Zerg player who dropped in. Sorry, app battle. With the Zerg player who dropped in, had equal food, and at the end of the battle had equal food, but had a lot of money at the start of the battle and had a lot less money at the end of the battle. That was a net loss. We did a very careful analysis. Start of the drop, end of the drop. Good. Got to do that a lot. That's why it's so hard. You really have to start analyzing drops one at a time. Be very, very careful with it. So let us see here. Last question from Sixpool, 1965. Day 9, you almost never see a Zerg drop. Do you feel like Hydra drops are the only unit that needs to be in drops? Also, Zerg often relies on expanding a lot. Does this make drops a lot less useful for Zerg? I don't know if I'd necessarily say that Zerg often relies on expanding a lot. You can do a lot of clever things with them. I do want to just touch on the Hydralisk a little bit, because I think Hydralisk drops can, in the future, just be something that people will use a lot more as a standard. Because people, again, acknowledge Hydras kind of suck without creep, or they're just immobile, but there's a lot of fancy things you can do with them, like Hydras plus Spinecrawler pushes. Wow, does that work well? Because the Spinecrawlers take the damage while the Hydralisks deal the damage. Creep highways into Hydralisk pushes. Big drops with Hydralisk work well. But I think, I would actually say, I think the reason that you don't see drops as much with Zerg is more so because your opponents are generally expanding less as against Zerg. Protosses tend to hold themselves up really tight. Cannons, sentries, block off everything, and then carefully take more expansions. Terrans kind of do the same thing. So Doom drops never really get the chance to make their appearance in the mid-game. And that's where most players will end their games. Even at the highest levels, most players wrap the game up in the mid-game, 95% of the time. So in the later stages of the game, when things start to get spread out, drops are starting to get really good for Zerg. And that is where I think that Zerg buddies need to really begin focusing. Has nothing to really do, I think, with whether the units are good and bad, or whether it's a good or bad choice. It's just that you don't get to the point where they end up being useful. So I have done 2 dailies in a row. I am sleepy. For Friend Day Wednesday, I still need to get a friend on tomorrow. We had Huck last week, and that was an awesome daily. So hopefully I'm going to have someone awesome on tomorrow. I'll let you know about that. For next week's Newbie Tuesday, I did have an idea for that, and I'm going to be sorting through it in my mind for just a moment. Listen to this entertaining elevator music while I try to recall what it was I was going to say. What was it? I can't believe this is coming to my mind. I'm determined to figure this out, though. Oh yeah, I remembered. So, so focusing on the one unit theme again, the Colossus gives a lot of people a lot of trouble, because it's this gigantic, beastly unit that, like, if you see an army roll in, like a lot of Gateways and Zealots, you normally go, okay, I can deal with that. But if you see a lot of Gateways, or a lot of Stalkers and Zealots, and then, like, 4 Colossi, you just go, oh my goodness. So I want you to submit to me replays of you getting to that overwhelming Colossus army that just crushes you. And we'll talk again. Is it the way you control the battle? Is it your composition against the Colossus and the army? Or is it something strategically that went wrong before then? Submit those to Tuesday at day9.tv. Please make the title Newbie Tuesday space dash and then say Colossus Daily. Make sure that it is Newbie Tuesday space dash Colossus Daily. I wanted to say that, or else it will not be checked, because there's too many emails coming in for too many different things. Want that. And next week's Fun Day Monday is the same as 2 weeks ago, which was submit a game of you playing a 3v3 or a 4v4 with someone, or with everyone on your team, announcing publicly the one unit that they will be making for the remainder of that game. Yeah. Just one unit. One unit. That's going to wrap it up. I'm sleepy, so I'm going to eat some pizza. I'm going to climb into bed. Pizza. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow for the daily. Oh, yeah. Ooh.